Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Mayor Parker. I wanted to start with the Equal Rights Ordinance, which produced a lot of controversy, maybe some demagoguery amongst some national Republican politicians and commentators. I'm wondering Never, right. Which forbids discrimination based on sexual orientation and other criteria. I'm wondering, what did you learn through that fight about the politics of promoting LGBT rights in a red state environment?
Well, first, I started out as a lesbian activist back in the 70s. I'm dating myself now. But what I was reminded of is that a lot of the things I went through back then I am going through again. But the world has changed profoundly in those decades. When we started the efforts to pass an equal rights ordinance for the city of Houston, we were really late to the dance. We had no local non-discrimination ordinance, so we weren't doing what most major cities have done in the last few years, which is go in and add sexual orientation and gender identity to an existing ordinance. We started from scratch. And when people say, how did it happen in Houston, how did you get it passed? It's because we had an inclusive ordinance that included all those who are covered by federal statute as well as some additional categories. And we were able to do it in a way that had 2/3 vote of city council to make it happen.
And do you have a prediction about when you think Texas will allow gay marriage?
When the Supreme Court forces it.
So you don't see it
certainly in my lifetime, and my life partner of 23 years and I got married in last January. We went out to California, and I had hoped that while I was still mayor of Houston, I'd be able to be legal in the state of Texas. I don't think it's going to be quite that soon, but not long after.
But you said only when the court forces. Do you see a significant shift of opinions in Texas, or do you feel like basically the resistance is still very strong?
A shift of opinions across the United States, and the dominoes are falling one after another, and they're all falling in the same direction. That war has been won. It's just there's a few battles still left to fight.
I know you have a background in the energy industry, and you serve on the President's Task Force on Climate Change. I'm wondering, coming from a city which is so heavily connected to the energy industry, but also obviously a port city, very potentially affected by climate change itself, how do these issues of climate and the relationship to energy look from Houston?
I spent 20 years working in the oil and gas industry. In fact, I worked for Republican oil man Robert Mosbacher for 18 years. And what I tell people is oil and gas are going to fuel the world for decades to come, but that doesn't mean we don't need to look at other forms of energy. And the city of Houston is the largest municipal purchaser of renewable energy in America. We've made a commitment to green and renewable energy because we think it's the right thing to do, and that we're trying to lead by example. I also serve as a steering committee member of the C40, which is a coalition of global megacities focused on climate change. We need to recognize that there's no easy solution to this. There's no, we can't suddenly stop fueling as I said earlier, the world with oil and gas. But we have to be looking to the future and recognize that even whatever our power source, we can do a better job in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And it's not quite the same conversation. Most of us in Texas who are engaged in environmental issues don't spend a lot of time arguing things. I don't want to argue about whether climate change is a product of human action or not. I certainly believe it is, but I don't spend a lot of time arguing about it. I just focus on what can we do to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions? What can we do to become more energy efficient? Because guess what? Almost everything we do is good for the bottom line. It's very Houston, it's very Texas. We go back to practicalities. I don't spend a lot of time in theory. I try to convince people based on hard facts that focus on the bottom line.
David Brooks had a column recently in which he talked about Houston's economic success and the model of Houston as a city, contrasting it to San Francisco. He mentioned that Houston has been -- in job growth per capita since 2000. He also mentioned that it's considered a very livable city for particularly people with children. What's at the root of Houston's economic success over the last decade or two?
First, it's the underlying sectors of our economy. We are the oil and gas capital of the world, and we're in a transformative period in the oil and gas industry with unconventional gas development, the so-called fracking shale gas plays. We're America's largest import-export port, and port business has really been doing well. Houston has the Texas Medical Center, the largest accretion of medical facilities in one place in the world. And then we are one of the fastest growing manufacturing regions. We have a very, I'm going to sound like Rick Perry here in a minute. We have a business-friendly environment. We're a low-tax, low-regulation state, and we have lots of room to spread out. And so all of that has helped fuel Houston. But we also have, we have 5 four-year universities, including 2 Tier 1 universities. We're a major research hub. We have NASA. We have the second highest number of engineers per capita in America, and all of that has helped. However, let me tell you something that most people don't know about Houston. 1 in 5 Houstonians is foreign-born. I have 92 foreign consulates in Houston. The world comes to Houston. We're one of the most internationally focused U.S. cities. We're better known across our borders than across U.S. state lines. There's still a lot of folks up here who think about Houston, and that's that cultural wasteland somewhere down there that it's hot and muggy and it's got a lot of mosquitoes. Yes, 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 yes. However, we are a global megacity, and we attract the best and the brightest from around the world who come to Houston because of the industry that we have, the economy that we have, and the welcoming nature of the city. You know, that comparison between Houston and San Francisco that you referenced, they always start off with about how beautiful San Francisco is. I have, it's not an exaggeration to say there are 100 high-rise office buildings, or office and residential towers going up across the greater Houston community. That may not be beautiful to some people, but it's awfully damn beautiful to me.
You mentioned Houston is a very welcoming city to people around the world, and yet in the larger political climate, I mean, there's obviously a tremendous amount of fear and anxiety about immigration into the United States. You see that a lot of people's first response to ISIS as a threat is, you know, shut down the border. The threat, you know, when Ebola comes up, people say stop the flights in from West Africa. How do you manage the politics of making the case that all of this immigration, increased diversity is good for the city when it's clearly producing a fair amount of anxiety around the country?
I think we have to separate 2 things. One is that Texas is a border state, and we have the issue of undocumented immigrants coming across our borders, and you will find that all of the border states have a pretty pragmatic attitude about that. As a mayor of Houston, I'm not involved in immigration enforcement. People come, they want to work, they want to contribute to the economy, they want to pay taxes, which they do. If they don't break local laws, I'm focused on running a city and having a cooperative relationship with everybody who is in the city, and being able to, you know, we want them to bring their kids to clinics and get immunized. We want them to cooperate with the police when there's an issue. That's just practicalities. And every state on the border has some, or the cities in every state along the border have that attitude. But Houston has a number of expats and immigrants from other places around the globe. And so from that aspect, we're focused on, as I said, the best and the brightest come to Houston for a lot of reasons to build their future. We want to make sure that America is able to benefit from that in-migration, and it's a balancing act. Obviously, the United States must at some point come to grips with undocumented immigrants here across America, and whether we want to do what would be necessary to completely seal our borders. And we're all frustrated that the federal government hasn't tackled that yet. From a local perspective, we've had some significant crimes perpetrated by illegal immigrants. And I use that term deliberately, and I've been using undocumented before, because our view is that if you're living peacefully in Houston, we want you to live peacefully in Houston. You break a local law, we will arrest you, we will prosecute you, we will turn you over to ICE, we'll do whatever we need to do. But if we have deported you and you're back again, and we have deported you and you're back again, and we've deported you and you're back again, that's the definition of insanity right there. You're doing the same thing over and over again, and that's what frustrates people, I think, even Houstonians.
And how toxic politically is it in Houston and more broadly in Texas to talk about amnesty, which seems to be
It's not toxic at all.
And yet you have senators like Ted Cruz who seem to be pretty militantly opposed to the kind of immigration reform that would include some path to citizenship.
Do my best not to talk about Senator Ted Cruz. Our business community, and in fact, this is going to be the second time I mention my governor. You know, he has been, again, the State Department of Public Safety and the City of Houston's Police Department have exactly the same policies in dealing with the undocumented. And we all, the business community of Houston, our Greater Houston Partnership, clearly on record saying that we need a path to citizenship.
So why are I'm sorry to believe this, then why are the politics in the state so tough on that issue?
Again, I don't know that, I don't view them as so tough. The rhetoric in Washington is not reflected in the practicalities of governing the city, governing the state, and making sure that human beings who are a fact on the ground are able to live together and work somehow cooperatively with each other.
You mentioned before we came out on the stage that I think of the cities in America with more than 1 million people, there have only been 10 women mayors of those cities.
In history, 2 in Houston.
2 in Houston. So I guess there's a two-part question. First of all, why so few? What is it about the job of mayor that you think maybe creates unique political challenges in terms of a glass ceiling for women candidates? And then I'm also interested why Houston has been able to be a bit of an exception to that.
As mayor of Houston, I represent more people than the governors of 15 states. It's a CEO position. I run a $5 billion corporation, and it's a lot like running for a position as governor. It's big money, big league politics. But I'm also commander-in-chief of our police department, our fire department, in charge of emergency response and so forth. And so while America is getting better about that, first I think you have to have women who are qualified and capable in the pipeline to run for those positions. But we still have a step to go to view women as that CEO, commander-in-chief. It's certainly still an issue in the business community as well.
And why has Houston been an exception to that?
Well, Houston is...
Besides the fact you have great candidates like yourself.
I say, yeah, they have a wonderful, dynamic mayor, yes. But people don't understand the mindset of Houston. It is, and it's the attitude in Texas as well, and that is that we don't really care. As we say in the South, it's who your people are. We don't really care who your people are. We don't care where you're from. We care what you can do, what you bring. Now, in my own election, I had already been elected citywide in the city of Houston 6 times. I was elected, everyone's like, oh my gosh, how could this happen in Houston? Well, it already happened 6 times. I was the familiar candidate, and I was coming out of the controller's office. We have an elected controller because we're a strong mayor system. The only other woman mayor of Houston, Kathy Whitmire, was elected out of the controller's office, and she too got to preside over a terrible economic downturn. We elected, it was a benefit to come out of the controller's office. Who do you want in a time of economic crisis? Someone who knows where every dollar in the city is. There's no mystery.
Mayor Parker, thank you so much for being with us here in the Washington D.C. Festival. Thank you.
Thank you.